Here's where we are in the governance series. We completed phase 1, seeing the system letters 1 to 12. We are in phase 2, designing the system letters 13 to 30. We completed stage 1 through stage 4. We are now in stage 5, preventing a regression, letters 24 to 26. We just completed letter 26A, when the organization quietly rewrites itself. We are in letter 26B, reading the signal, not the alarm. In our previous workshops, we have discovered how organizations adapt to their environment. We saw how informal workarounds were one way of adaptation. As with the previous letters, I invite you to step into the workshop. Imagine you are one of the executives responsible for what happens next. Cybersecurity is the environment for our workshop, not because we're going to discuss security itself, but because security consists of many interconnected layers and allows us to observe how organizations govern complex systems. A technology company developed an end-to-end enterprise security solution. I was part of a global team asked to develop and deliver workshops for their customers, not to teach individual security products, but to expand how organizations thought about security. Many organizations invest significant time and resources protecting their enterprise assets and intellectual property, IP. They establish security operations centers, SOCs. They classify information, deploy firewalls, implement endpoint protection, develop incident response procedures, backup and restoration processes, and create security policies around all of these activities. Every one of these activities contribute to reducing risk. None of these activities, however, represents security by itself. Security is an ecosystem. It is the seamless interaction between all of these activities. I was in Australia delivering one of these workshops when the WannaCry ransomware attack spread across organizations throughout the world. Because the ransomware attack had already challenged everyone's confidence in their existing security strategy, I was able to move beyond the planned workshop and begin with a different series of questions. I asked, what kind of security do you have in place? Many said, firewalls, endpoint protection, antivirus software, identity management. I introduced the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. Rather than viewing security as a single technology, the kill chain demonstrates that a threat actor has multiple opportunities to penetrate established persistence, move laterally, and ultimately accomplish their objective. Then I asked, how many of your organizations were affected by the WannaCry ransomware attack? Many indicated they had been. I said, let me make sure I understand. All of you said you have security in place, but the WannaCry ransomware attack still breached your security defenses. The question was no longer whether the organizations possessed security technologies. The question became, what protection did your security system possess, and what was that system based on? If a threat actor sends an email that appears to come from someone within your organization, and an employee opens the attachment and malware is introduced into your network, which security technology failed? The discussion expanded further and began to shift perspectives. The answer was no longer a firewall or endpoint protection or identity management. The discussion had moved beyond individual technologies to the relationships between people, processes, technologies, decisions, and governance. We entered the first phase of the executive navigation chart, referenced in letter 25A, experience. An event allows the organization to reveal something that previously remained unnoticed. One objective I had was for the customer to view security no longer as a collection of products, but a governing system. Another important point was for the customer to understand that no security system can totally eliminate any and all attacks. Your security governance strategy is in place to eliminate as many possible attack threats and then reduce the potential impact if any one of those events occurs. Another objective was to see the ransomware attack as a message to motivate us to investigate how we structured our security system. Let us look at an example. Since calibration recurs inside every phase in the executive navigation chart, that moved us into the calibration phase of experience. Something is different than what I believed. One aspect of your security governance strategy is to improve an organization's ability to recover. Backups are an essential component of every strategy. The governing idea behind this is to maintain continuity. Continuity of security, service, support, sales, operations, everything your organization does and provides. I asked, what is your restoration plan? Most people indicated they restore from their backups. How frequently are your backups performed? The answers varied. Every month, every 2 months, every 3 months. Then I asked, how long can malicious software, exploit kit, virus, remain inside an organization before it is activated? There was uncertainty regarding this question. Some estimated a few weeks, others believed perhaps a month or two. My answer surprised many. Threat actors may establish a presence inside an organization and remain dormant for many months before launching an attack. In some cases, a year. Let us connect the dots here. Malicious software can remain inside your network for 12 months before it activates. Now ask yourself, does it matter which backup you restore from? 3 months ago, 6 months, 9 months, or maybe 11 months ago? If the malware was already inside your network before that backup was created, the answer is the same every time. You are not restoring just your data. You are restoring the malware along with it. We have just reached the recognition stage in the executive navigation chart. The executive begins understanding what the experience is actually revealing. The restoration process everyone trusted had the potential to restore the malicious software along with the organization's data. The purpose of that question was not to criticize backup strategies. It was to expand the organization's understanding of recovery and continuity. One benefit of governance. Backups are important. Recovery is important. Neither, by themselves, define security. Even though we know, as we said earlier, no security can eliminate all security risks, every breach transitions us into a discovery phase. It is no longer asking whether a particular technology functioned correctly. It is asking something much deeper. What was the event revealing? Discovery asks whether the existing model is complete. The ransomware attack became more than a security event. It revealed where our understanding had reached its limits. Every significant organizational event has the potential to reveal something that remained invisible until the event made it impossible to ignore and motivated us to examine the governing assumptions that quietly shape how the organization thinks, decides, and responds. This transitioned us into the calibration phase of recognition in the executive navigation chart. We need a way to interpret what we have just experienced. Earlier, we mentioned the term policy. Before we continue, I will clarify what I mean by the word policy. If governance exists to help the organization continuously observe, evaluate, learn, adapt, and redesign itself, then governance was meant to be directing leadership toward the expanding threat landscape before the ransomware attack demonstrated it. In other words, the incomplete security strategy was the visible structural pattern. The incomplete governance strategy was the hidden structural pattern that allowed the incomplete security strategy to persist. We are now positioned to enter the next stage of the executive navigation chart, called Name. Return to letter 13A and identify the structural pattern that best explains the experience. Throughout this governance series, a policy is not simply a document. It is the formal expression of how an organization intends to guide decisions, behaviors, responsibilities, and actions within a particular area of the enterprise. Policies communicate intent, establish boundaries, provide consistency, and reduce unnecessary variation. They help translate the organization's objectives into everyday decisions and operational practices. However, policies are not governance. They are one expression of governance. Governance is the broader system that continually determines why policies are needed, when they should change, and how they relate to one another, and whether they still reflect the realities of the organization they are intended to guide. Throughout this workshop, we are not examining whether policies are good or bad, or whether organizations have too many or too few. The structural pattern we identified is policy accumulation. Policy accumulation does not occur because organizations need more policies. It occurs because each new event is answered with another layer of documentation. Or when organizations repeatedly solve problems within an existing governance model, instead of asking, why did our governance not reveal this expanding security requirement sooner? Or which assumption about the organization's governance did the event just invalidate? Those questions shift the executive from reacting to the event to examining the system responsible for continuously learning from events. You do not create effective governance by continually refining an incomplete governance model. A lighthouse does not warn sailors to study the lighthouse. It warns them to look somewhere else. The lighthouse is simply pointing towards something they cannot yet see. That is exactly what policy accumulation does. It is not pointing us toward policies. It is pointing us beneath them. Policy accumulation is not the governance issue. It is the visible signal that governance is asking to be examined. Policy accumulation is the beacon. Governance is what the beacon is illuminating. The ransomware attack did not simply reveal an opportunity to strengthen security. It revealed an opportunity to strengthen the governance system that was meant to be continuously strengthening security all along. This is the calibration portion of name. Now we have language for what we observed. That is a profound distinction. It means governance is no longer seen as the owner of policies. It becomes the organization's capacity to continually expand its understanding of reality. Policies tell the organization how it intends to operate. Governance continually determines whether those policies still represent the organization it has become. The next phase of the executive navigation chart is design. Move from structural pattern to its design resolution and consult the guidance developed throughout letters 13b through 23. Once the structural pattern has been identified, the question is no longer what policy should we add? The question becomes what capability should governance possess so that the organization continually expands its understanding before events force that expansion. This is the distinction between responding to experience and learning from experience. Organizations often respond well. Governance must learn well. When governance continuously observes the environment, evaluates emerging structural patterns, challenges its assumptions, and redesigns itself accordingly, policies become one expression of that learning. The objective, therefore, is not to reduce the number of policies, nor is it to rewrite every existing policy. The objective is to strengthen the organization's capacity to continuously discover where its current understanding is becoming incomplete. When that capability exists, policies evolve as a natural consequence of governance. They no longer accumulate as isolated responses. Consider the ransomware attack once again. Had the organization continually examined the changing threat landscape, questioned its assumptions, and evaluated how its various security capabilities interacted with one another, many of the discussions triggered by the ransomware attack would already have been occurring. The ransomware attack did not create the need for stronger governance. It revealed that stronger governance had already been needed. The design resolution for policy accumulation is purposeful policy design. Governance is not primarily responsible for creating policies. Governance is responsible for creating an organization capable of continually expanding its understanding of reality. Policies simply communicate what that understanding currently requires. This becomes the calibration associated with design. Now we understand what should be intentionally designed or strengthened. The executive begins seeing governance differently. Governance is no longer viewed as the function that approves documents. It becomes the capability that continually helps the organization observe, evaluate, learn, adapt, and redesign itself as its environment changes. We now arrive at the final stage of the executive navigation chart, stewardship. Continue guiding the organization with the river, lighthouse, compass, and navigational chart as the organization continues evolving. We began this workshop with cybersecurity. By the end of the workshop, we were no longer discussing cybersecurity. We were discussing the capability every organization requires regardless of its industry. A steward understands that every significant event is more than an operational occurrence. It is information. Every disruption, unexpected outcome, customer complaint, security incident, regulatory finding, and successful innovation. Each one provides an opportunity to reveal assumptions that were previously invisible. The steward does not lead with, how do we prevent this from happening again? The steward first asks, what is this event revealing about the way we govern? That question changes everything. Instead of continuously adding policies, the organization continuously expands its understanding. Instead of treating governance as the owner of documentation, governance becomes the organization's capacity to remain aligned with an ever-changing environment. Policies continue to evolve. New technologies emerge. Threats continue to change. Markets continue to shift. None of that ever stops. The steward, therefore, does not attempt to create a permanent policy. The steward develops an organization capable of continual discovery. This is the calibration of stewardship. Stewardship has reached another level of maturity. From this new altitude, relationships that were once hidden become visible, allowing the next stage of the journey to begin with greater clarity and intentionality. That is why policy accumulation is such an important structural pattern. It reminds us that policies are not the destination. They are evidence of something much deeper, like the lighthouse. They point beyond themselves. They invite us to examine the governance system that produced them. In our next workshop, we will examine another structural pattern that quietly develops inside many organizations. Unlike policy accumulation, which expands through documentation, this next structural pattern develops through increasing dependence. Over time, organizations gradually become reliant upon individuals, technologies, suppliers, or processes without fully recognizing the risk that dependence creates until continuity is unexpectedly threatened. That structural pattern is dependency fragility, and it reveals yet another way organizations unknowingly adapt to their environment while believing everything remains stable. Thank you.